The Houston Texans have just pulled off an absolutely blockbuster trade for Stefon Diggs. Today, let's discuss this trade and what it means for the Houston Texans, as well as what is the upside of this Houston Texans team come next year. This trade comes just hours after RG3 posted, "Is Stefon Diggs essential to Josh Allen's success?" Somebody responded in the comment section below saying, "Does Josh benefit from having a top-tier receiver? Yes. Is he essential to the success? No." Stefon Diggs did not like that and said, "Are you sure?" And then just a few hours post this post on Twitter, we got the breaking news of Stefon Diggs being traded. So the draft compensation that was given in return for Stefon Diggs was a second-round pick in 2025. The Houston Texans received Stefon Diggs, a fifth and a sixth-round pick in 2025 as well. And let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Stefon Diggs going to the Houston Texans is going to radically change this offense for the Houston Texans. This was a Texans team that when Nico Collins or Tank Dell were either injured or not playing up to what they have been doing the entire season, they didn't have a reliable target to really go to. This is now an offense with legitimately 3-star wide receivers to go along with some solid tight end play and 5 starting worthy offense alignment. You now put this team together with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and yes, CJ Stroud is already one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL despite his young age. This is a team that is now built for success this upcoming year, but also in the next several years. Stefon Diggs will be a player that's going to be playing for the Houston Texans for several years. He just signed a contract extension not that long ago with the Buffalo Bills, and now he's being shipped off to the Houston Texans. Now, Stefon Diggs is not a cheap player. However, he's also not the most expensive wide receiver out there in the market. Given how much a guy like Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb are about to get paid, Stefon Diggs making about 18 to 19 million a year really is not that much. Say what you want about Stefon Diggs, and I understand he's one of the biggest trauma queens in the NFL. However, he's a very good player who can easily get over 1,000 yards any given season. Hell, he's been doing it since 2018. Every single year he has over 1,000 receiving yards. You're now putting him on a team with a legitimately great quarterback in CJ Stroud. This team's potential is through the roof. And the Houston Texans have really embraced the mindset of going all in with their quarterback being on a rookie deal. By acquiring guys like Azeez Al-Shaair, Jeff Okudah, Danielle Hunter, Joe Mixon, this is a team that isn't being dormant about where they're positioned at in the AFC. This is a team that is going all the way in. This is a Houston Texans team that understands that once CJ Stroud gets paid a $60, $70 million contract, which, by the way, that's going to be coming up in a few years and it's going to be massive, that they don't have any time to just sit around and wait. They have to go all in this year while their quarterback is making damn near next to nothing. We've seen several teams have rookie quarterbacks and be a little bit too scared to make these big time moves, but not the Houston Texans, and I'll give them credit. They're making the strides to become that championship level team. Is this Texans roster as it is constructed currently better than the Kansas City Chiefs? I'll leave that up for your interpretation. It's really hard to tell you whether it is or isn't. But given the fact that this Houston Texans team was in the second round of the playoffs last year with clearly a worser roster than it is now, and by the way, it's only going to get better after the draft as well, it makes you truly wonder what this potential for this roster can be if they can hit their stride early next year and pick up the pace as the year goes on, and then once they hit the playoffs, they don't have any sort of stagnant play from any positions. Again, offensively speaking, this is going to be a roster that has 3 legitimately good wide receivers. Tank Dell had a very successful rookie season, going over 700 yards in only a handful of snaps. Then you have guys like Nico Collins, who had their breakout year last year, going for over 1,000 yards. Then Stefon Diggs, a continuous guy who's going to continuously get you 1,000 yards every single year. Really, to be honest with you, wherever Stefon Diggs goes, the quarterbacks typically get better. And I don't expect CJ Stroud to all of a sudden turn into Patrick Mahomes or be the best quarterback in the NFL, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's top 5 next year. I mean, hell, there's already people saying that CJ Stroud is a top 10 quarterback, which I really can't argue with him. CJ Stroud is damn near on that level. And now you're going to put him in an offense with 3 receiver ones, 2 very good tight ends, a good offensive line, and now some running backs. I mean, this offense is ridiculous. You also look at this defense. I mean, Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry, Will Anderson Jr. Those are 3 very good pass rushers. By the way, don't sleep on Danico Autry. He's coming off 11 sacks last year. Your linebacking room was Christian Harris, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Henry To'oTo'o. I don't love the linebacking core, but Azeez Al-Shaair's best years were with the San Francisco 49ers, who were defensive coordinated by the head coach of the Houston Texans. Their secondary is a little bit thin in the cornerback position. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but getting a guy like Jeff Okudah, who when healthy plays pretty well, especially last year, to pair him up with a young guy in Derek Stingley Jr. makes a lot of sense to me. You also have Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward as your 2 safeties. Could use some work there, but it's definitely not the worst thing in the world. So all in all, I think this move for the Houston Texans is a very smart and calculated move. You now give your young star quarterback another star weapon who may not be the youngest, but isn't very expensive and is also still very damn good. You now put him in a situation where he can potentially win a championship this year and moving forward. Again, when you have a young quarterback on a rookie deal, you have to go all in. You have to make the decisions, the moves, to find the necessary pieces to surround your young quarterback with to win a championship. I know I use this team a lot as examples, but they're kind of like the poster child of the situation, the Dallas Cowboys. When Dak Prescott was under his rookie deal, the Dallas Cowboys had every chance in the world to build a championship contender around him, but they didn't. They were dormant. They didn't do anything in free agency. They didn't make any big time moves. And well, we all know how that ended up. Dak Prescott would get paid and the team would get worse around him. I mean, now Dallas is struggling to find any pieces to surround Dak Prescott with because of how much he's getting paid. And once your quarterback does get paid, the only way that you can really build a contender around that guy is if you draft very well in the draft, which fortunately for Dallas, they've been able to do. But for the Houston Texans' sake, you don't really want to have to figure that out for yourself. You have a guy on a rookie deal with a team that has already proven that they can make that deep playoff run without that much talent. And now you go out there and you say, okay, we know what this team is capable of right now. How can we take that next step? How can we go from being a good team to a fantastic team to a championship contender team? As it sits right now, I think this Houston Texans team is sitting sort of at that fantastic team spot. And I think next year we're going to figure out if this team is truly a contender. Screw just winning the division. This Houston Texans team wants to go all in to win a championship. Getting Stefon Diggs is definitely the right move. Now, like I said earlier, this team is not still perfect. I think this team does have a couple of things they would like to address within the rest of free agency, as well as heading towards the draft. And as we look towards the draft, we have to figure out what positions does this Houston Texans team need to continue to address. Early on in the cycle of figuring out what the Texans should go for, a lot of people were saying wide receiver, but now with Stefon Diggs being there, you don't really need a wide receiver. Sure, you can take a young guy and throw him in as a rotational piece, but that would probably be more of like a 4th or 5th round pick type of thing. But outside of that, the offensive line already has their 5 starters. Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard appear to be your 5 starters on your offensive line. You could also throw in a Jarrett Patterson here and there at the center position. But defensively, as I kind of alluded to earlier, you really want to look to address your secondary and possibly some extra linebackers, mainly outside on the Will linebacker or the Sam linebacker. I like Christian Harris and I like Henry To'oTo'o, but I don't really know if Henry is truly that every down guy quite yet. But I will say, I think we saw enough flashes last year that if they were to go into next year with him as a starter, I would be okay with that. For me, I would really like to see this team seriously focus in on that cornerback position. Unfortunately, this is not a very deep cornerback class. It's very top heavy with about 4 to 5 guys who I think are genuinely worth a 1st round pick. But then after that, you kind of have a bit of a big drop off. You have guys like Ennis Rakestraw and TJ Tampa who might be available, so keep an eye out for those guys. The Houston Texans have 8 draft picks in this upcoming draft, 2 2nd round picks. One of them is the Minnesota pick, 1 3rd round pick, 2 4th round picks, 1 6th round pick, and 2 7th round picks. With their 2 2nd round picks, I would like to see them pick up a cornerback and potentially a safety, but I would also like to see this team go out there and take a younger running back to add to this roster. They added Joe Mixon in the offseason, and to be honest with you, I don't love the move, but I also don't hate it, and I do understand why they got the guy. At this stage in his career, Joe Mixon isn't really an explosive back, but he is somebody who can get you the dirty yards and be that veteran in the locker room that this team probably could use. You're going to pair Joe Mixon up with a guy like Dameon Pierce, who in some ways is kind of a similar running back, especially style-wise, to a Joe Mixon. At this stage in his career, Pierce is a bit more of an explosive athlete than Joe Mixon, but he's definitely not an explosive athlete in comparison to what you could potentially get in this year's draft. Last year, Dameon Pierce definitely did take kind of a step back based off of his rookie season. In Dameon Pierce's rookie year, he had 939 rushing yards, and then last year only 416, and his average per run went down from a 4.3 to a 2.9, so it definitely was a disappointing second year for Dameon Pierce. For the sake of the Houston Texans, I ideally would like to see him maybe pick it up to be a quality running back who can get you 700 to 800 yards if you need him to. In this year's draft, fortunately, this is a pretty, I don't want to say good running back class, but I would say there's a lot of depth to this running back class. Jonathan Brooks is probably your best running back option available, but I don't really want to see him in a Houston Texans uniform. I think they need to go with a more speedy option like a Jalen Wright or a Trey Benson or a Bucky Irving. I think those guys could easily be your backup or even 3rd string running back who can be your change of pace option, because you already have Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce who are bigger, more bruisier style running backs. You ideally want to find your change of pace back who's more of your speedy option. Bucky Irving is also a little bit smaller, so maybe he can kind of fit into what they had last year with Devin Singletary a little bit better than what a Trey Benson could. But I also like Jalen Wright for the fact that he is Alvin Kamara-like, but he's not Alvin Kamara, obviously. And I think the thing for this offense is, as long as you can continuously feed your weapons, Diggs, Collins, and Dell, I want to see them try to find ways to utilize guys like Brevin Jordan a little bit more. You obviously brought in Dalton Schultz back for a reason, and I think that was the right move, but I want to see Brevin Jordan take that next step. Hopefully we'll see some more 2 tight end packages for the Houston Texans next year that include a Brevin Jordan. But again, I think offensively wise, outside of the running back position, it's pretty damn good. Defensively, your defensive line got 10 times better from last year. You could use some better depth at the defensive tackle position, but I'm definitely not that concerned about it. Your linebacking core got significantly better with Azeez Al-Shaair. I would like to see the depth options get a little bit better there as well. Figure out this secondary, and I think this defense can be one of the better defensive units next year. I think for this Houston Texans team, as long as this defense isn't abysmal next year, which they're definitely not going to be, this team should be damn good next year. I think if this Houston Texans defense can be top 10 to top 15, that might elevate this team to become a championship contender because of how good this offense's potential is. So all in all, what do I rate the Stefon Diggs trade? Well, for the Houston Texans perspective of things, I think it's a smart, calculated decision. Am I concerned about the locker room stuff and the extracurricular stuff with Stefon Diggs? Sure, generally a tad bit I definitely am. However, this is an A- move. You go out there, get a wide receiver 1 to add alongside 2 wide receiver 1s and Tank Dell and Nico Collins. You now have a trio of wide receivers to surround your young star quarterback with. You've had an excellent offseason getting guys like Joe Mixon, Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry, so on and so forth. For the Buffalo Bills perspective of things, I'll make a separate video on them on Friday, so I don't want to spoil too many details. If you are a Bills fan watching, keep an eye out for that video because it's going to be going into detail about where this Bills team goes post Stefon Diggs. But Houston Texans fans and NFL fans, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button, and I love you guys. Peace.